Take one.
What it means to be a Discordian. Take one.
All right. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because we talk about it a lot, but we never talk about it on camera. So one of the things we share is this idea of like what it means to be a Discordian. So I wanted to get your input and then I'll respond.
Okay, so I was having a conversation with my son about this the other day. So in the context of what Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand what you're talking about. My boy's 8, just barely explained it to him. So we're going to start from that right there. In the conversation, I said something to my son Hunter about lying versus Discordian, and he came back to me and he's like, "Well, aren't Discordians liars?" And I had to think about it for a moment. And after thinking about it, I realized liars try to deceive people to get them away from the truth. Discordians challenge people to get to the truth. And I think that's the fundamental difference in that. And expounding on that, it's kind of like something we were talking about earlier. The classic Greeks didn't have the classic Greeks to base themselves off of. So within that context, anything new or different information is going to be Discordian because it doesn't fit into the normal context of what reality is. And within that Discordianism, there's your reality, there's my reality, or truth, and then there's the real truth, and never shall they meet.
Yeah.
So the idea behind my idea of Discordianism is getting people to their own truths.
I love it because one of the pieces we were talking about on the way over here is you have like your current version of the truth, and then you get introduced to something new, so it gives you new information, and so that truth ends up expanding. And I think when we're thinking about what we are doing through our program at ID and what we're wanting our participants to really think about is really looking at how do you expand your version of truth, or how do you expand your version of reality? And some of those are going to be deep and core, and we're like, I don't want to touch those need to stay. And then some other ones you're like, yeah, that's kind of old now, I don't want to think like that anymore, or I need to fine tune kind of my way of seeing. So I love that this kind of gets to be foundational for what we're ultimately helping people do, which is helping them find this next iteration of themselves through self-discovery and self-reflection, and pushing their edge around what they think true is, or what they believe to be true today, and whether or not it's still working for them.
I always like to go back, there's a book came out years ago, 100 Things You Tell Yourself or something like that, and you fill it out when you're 20, and you fill it out when you're 40, and you look at it when you're 60, and it's like, oh yeah, when I was 20 I was an idealist, when I was 40 I was a practicalist, a pragmatist, and when I was 60 I was like, wow, I finally got the truth here. It's kind of the same way of looking at it. It's like, where are you now, where are you going to be, how do you challenge yourself to level up each time, and then what have you learned from that experience going from point A to point B? And I think that's part of the richness of the experience, but also the program is going through that transition and that change.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things that a lot of our clients will talk about is finding their own authenticity.
Yes.
All right. So there's this element of shedding and taking off other people's kind of conditioning and ways of seeing and values and beliefs, and really evaluating like what is core for them or what's authentic to them. And then for the areas that feel exposed, they're kind of wading around trying to figure out, well, what does authenticity actually mean and look like for me in this area of my life or around this particular belief. And sometimes that comes quickly, and other times it usually takes a long time because you have to have interactions with people and have conversations about it. And then you're like, yeah, I wholeheartedly believed that yesterday, but today I'm like, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah,
so,
process.
So it's like making sure that there's some level of flexibility and compassion as you're going through this new rediscovery or this new way of thinking and moving through the world.
I kind of think of the analogy of an onion. You know, on the outside it looks like an onion, but as you start to peel down to the truth of it, you're going to have to do a little bit of crying and get a little bit of reconciliation to get really into that. It's like that onion is going to make you cry, but you know in the end it's still going to be good because it's going to add to the whole experience.
Yeah, I'm sure neither one of us know anything about that.
No.
I think I do most of my crying in the shower. Yep.
Awesome.
So-
Anything else we want to say on this subject?
When you think about the process people might go through, or their process for coming back to their truth or expanding their truth, what would be your recommendation for more compassionately moving through that process? Because they might potentially get a lot of judgments from the people who are closest to them, or there could be some tension as they're going through these interactions with people.
I think the first thing is just being true to yourself and just being in alignment with that. It's like a lot of people want to keep us the way they know us and want to keep us pigeonholed in that because that's the way it's easy for them to work with us instead of being able to see us expand. You know, I'm a parent. My oldest son is in his 30s. I still sometimes see him as a small kid. My youngest one, I will still see when he's that big. So we all do that, but if we can work around that and be a little bit more authentic, then we'll reshoot that in a second.
Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead.
No.